I'm Judge Dave Larson, and I want to make the judiciary boring and dependable again. So I can't make many promises. I can't be partisan, but I can make a promise that when I take an oath, it'll mean something. And for judges, the oath is different. We only swear to uphold the Constitution of Washington State and the Constitution of the United States. That's our sole job. That's what we have to do, and everything has to relate to that. So, unlike the federal Constitution, our Declaration of Rights is right up front. It's in Article 1. And Article 1, Section 1 says, all political power is inherent in the people. Governments derive their just, and I emphasize just, powers from the consent of the governed. And the purpose of government is to protect and maintain individual rights. How close are we to having that be a reality today? Probably not that close. There's another provision that is violated, that has been violated, and why we're where we are today, and that's Article 1, Section 32. It says a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is essential to individual right and the perpetuity of free government. And the reason that's violated is because we're in the predicament we are, is because we think we're wiser than the people that created the Constitution. And we've migrated to a point where Article 1, Section 1 says all political power is inherent in government, that government derives its just powers from government, and the purpose of the government is to protect government. And that's not where we're supposed to be. So, this is an open seat. And I was going to retire next year, but I looked at the faces of my 4 grandchildren and said that I can't do that. I have to stand up. One of my mottos is disagreement is an opportunity, not a threat. I'll tell a story of my priest asked me to mediate a couple that had been married for 46 years. I was a mediator at the time, and I wasn't a judge. And I said, well, Father, I don't do family law, and I'm not a marriage counselor. But I wanted him to say nice things about me at my funeral, so I said, okay. Anyway, this gentleman was an engineer for Boeing. He had been very involved in the moon mission. God helped get us to the moon, very integral. And he wanted to be very risky with their investments, and invest in all kinds of inventions and everything he wanted to pursue. And the wife wanted to settle down. That was one of their disputes. She just wanted to be conservative and settle, not do many risky things. So in one of our private meetings, he said to me, if it wasn't for people like me, we'd have never made it to the moon, to kind of justify his position. So I looked him square in the eye and I said, if it wasn't for people like your wife, we'd have never made it back. So what happens right now, if there's no dissenting view, if there's no wait a minute in a body, whether it's a court or a legislative body or whatever, we end up making decisions that don't make sense. And so I'm not afraid to be that person that says, wait a minute, have you considered this? And I've proven that and I've got all the bruises and scars from proving that I'm not afraid to do that myself. And that's what we need on the Supreme Court, is somebody that says, wait a minute. There's some of the things on the Supreme Court that people aren't really aware of, and the Supreme Court, it actually runs the courts. They create all the court rules and everything else. And if you haven't noticed, we've had some problems in our communities with addiction and mental illness, and I'm on the front lines every day with that as a municipal court judge for now 16 years. So I've been the sponsor of many reforms and worked with the legislature, and some of those reforms have been adopted. But right now, it's like we have 320 jurisdictions, I believe, in Washington State, and probably 320 different approaches to how we're dealing with this. And so what ends up happening is we don't end up solving the problems. And what we need is leadership on the Supreme Court to say, this is what we need to do in the courts. This is what we need to do to resolve these issues. Because right now, we're not doing a very good job. And we continue to perpetuate the problem, the revolving door. And there's actual strategies that I've proposed, some of which have been adopted in the legislature so far to help us. But they're going to listen to a Supreme Court justice more than they're going to listen to some municipal court judge from Federal Way if I'm on the Supreme Court. So what we'll see is we'll actually see, if I get elected, you'll see actual reforms being proposed that will make sense for our communities and will make sense for the people that are affected by the ravages of mental illness and addiction. Now, what I have done is I've created a program called How Freedom Works. It's not related to my campaign, but it's an invitation to anybody that wants me to present it in your community. And what I've done is I've gone to the very basics of what freedom is, the principles of freedom. It's based on two simple rules that I've developed. Rule 1, love the freedom of others as much or more as you love your own. Rule 2 is it's more important to do right than it is to be right. The reason I created that program is we're in a world right now where I'm entitled to my opinion and you're entitled to my opinion too. And we need to get to a world where, like I said, disagreement's an opportunity, not a threat. Because disagreement is absolutely essential to the democratic process. The idea that somebody believes they have all the ideas and nobody else can speak on those or their whatever label you want to put on them is so antithetical to freedom and so antithetical to our system of government that it's repulsive to even think that would be possible. So the First Amendment is actually essential to allow us to actually function as a free society. We rely on disagreement. We rely on dissent. We rely on those things to come up with better ideas. So that's why we need a voice on the Supreme Court that's not that says, wait a minute, and that's the person I want to be. So I have a booth out here. If you want to come and talk, I'll be glad to talk. And thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. And I hope that this year we can bring it home. Like I said, that open seat, I think it's 16 years since the last time we had an open seat that could be filled with the voters selecting. Because what's happened over the years, in case you're not aware, is justices or judges will resign, which allows the governor to come in and appoint that person. Then they become the incumbent, and they're impossible to beat at that point. There are 205 judges at the Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, and Superior Court level. I believe it's about 160 of those 205 have been appointed by one person, and there's no confirmation process in Washington State. And that one person is the governor. And I would feel the same way if it was Governor Larson, that it's not fair. And so we have a judiciary right now that's selected by one person, and it's an opportunity to be this is an opportunity to select somebody from the people themselves. So thank you.